Hello. I made it.
Yes, you made it.
Okay, that threw me off. I was about to say, how did Pastor's voice get so high?
Yes, you have me. Pastor is here, but he's had his surgery, so
In recovery mode, huh? That's
yes,
good.
he's in
That's
recovery
good.
mode. hmm So how are you tonight?
Good. If you guys hear a lot of booming in the background, don't worry about it. It's just thunder,
Just
lightning, all that good stuff.
thunder and lightning. So your heavens are
Yeah.
shaking too.
Yeah. It shouldn't last for too long, but it's okay.
hmm Well, it's good to have you tonight.
Good to be here.
Yes. So I've got the lineup for the aliens webinar, and I've gotten Avi Loeb, Professor Avi Loeb, and now I have Stephen Bassett. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah, I've heard of him before. Yeah, yeah.
Yep. So,
Avi Loeb is quite persistent.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. I was explaining to them how he came up with his calculations to find the spherules.
Yeah. Yeah. His sled method.
Yes.
Is that what okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's so funny. He finds spheres in the ocean, right? They
Mm-hmm.
can't find a submarine on the first day.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird, isn't it?
Or cocaine in the White House.
Right. Right. Those things don't add up, do they?
No, they don't add up. Mm-hmm. No, but well, maybe they just don't have the right man on the job. You have to find Professor Loeb.
Right. He is a very persistent. He's quite the he's a thorn in the side of those who would desire to hide it. They have big major teams to throw people off, to keep the narrative, that common narrative going. And he's so persistent that his persistent habits are paying off. I think it's a good thing, especially for people, because if people don't know about certain things, they're going to be blind. And when the exposure takes place, they're going to have heart attacks. That's one of the biggest points. If they are informed, they won't, their hearts won't fail them. Because those people I'll tell you this, people who do know, a lot of those folks have had heart attacks because of what they know. It wasn't necessarily nefarious. It's just a lot to deal with. It's a lot to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah, so they already have. So you're saying the rest of this verse has been taking place for the people who do know.
Yeah, some people can take it, some people cannot. Some people you just don't see again. And naturally, people have a consensus as to what has happened to them. And sure enough, not too long after that, they're having a funeral. It's really, there's a public narrative. There's the web narrative, and then there's a real deal. Now, the web narrative is very close to the real thing, but to actually see it, to feel it, to experience it, that's a very different scenario. It's very different, and it really takes a person being solid in what they actually believe, right? Because most people, when they're exposed to it, their belief changes quickly. So if they're not rooted in a belief, they lose themselves. It's almost like they don't recover. They don't know what to believe anymore. Yeah.
And so, speaking of what we're going to see, so some people have been seeing a red star, this one person says, in Cape Town, South Africa. And then now we have narratives of Betelgeuse and Jupiter going to be in Pleiades. And so what are we seeing?
Well, they're always going to talk about, Betelgeuse and Betelgeuse and all these different things in the Orion cluster and other places. They will always refer back to something that everybody knows. But here's a fact that a lot of airline pilots, a lot of people at specific times of the day have already seen something very significant in the heavens, and it's persistent. It's getting it's getting more defined. It will become so defined that they can't hide it. It's not going to be hidden. They would have to obscure the entire heavens for that. And so, whether people accept that or not, this world is changing. Man has no control over that. Nobody has control over that. It's going to do what it wants to do, but they are, you have people with lots of assets in the southern hemisphere of the world watching. They're watching. They have dedicated billions of dollars per year to watching certain things in the sky. Why would the Vatican have a telescope in the first place if that type of telescope that can see in most, if not all, spectrums? Why would they have that? But educational wise, they only disclose maybe 5% of what they find and verify, right? So what are they doing with the rest of the technology? And oh, by the way, telescopes are extremely advanced these days. I mean, extremely advanced. For example, they can assemble a picture of an object by gas displacement from a very, from a far distance. Some of that technology is in the James Webb Telescope, how it assembles pictures by artificial intelligence, lots of electronics and optics and things of that nature. So it can essentially analyze what is sitting in the heavens, right? And then make a three-dimensional map of that, and then they will recollate all that data to come up with an image, a pretty accurate image, temperatures of things that are way out there that nobody can see. Not even, in fact, they can see things infrared can't pick up. You can't see it ultraviolet. So they have to assemble it a different way. CERN uses some of the imagery and things from that because it can see dark matter. So yeah, they have telescopes and technology like that, but they don't give public access to those things. So you have to ask yourself, why would they spend billions of dollars per year with the upkeep and further advancements of this technology just to watch, just to see what's going on in the heavens? No, believe me, it's a critical mission. They're tied in with all defense ministries in foreign countries and the DoD and Pentagon here. So they're very intricate in what's happening in space. And the Vatican is heading this out because they are appointed a part of that spiritual guidance that, they're spearheading the spiritual guidance other countries take for this. So to them, it's quite serious. They're on a timetable, a big timetable. And if anybody doubts that timetable, watch how many things alter. This year they made declarations like the Ukraine would join NATO, right? Like different things that they would do. They scrapped everything. Why would they all of a sudden scrap everything? Watch how everything alters itself in politics. Just watch. It's not going to make sense why they would scrap so many things and go a different direction, because they're on a very compressed timeline, and they know it. And people are starting to see things that whoever took that in Africa, they're not the only people at certain times of the day throughout the perimeter of the globe, or the southern hemisphere. People have been taking pictures of a very, pretty defined object. So we're dealing with more than one, right? Because every system has, just like our solar system, we have planets that are near the sun, planets that are distant from the sun. Well, this other system is no different. So if we're in fact in a binary system, which is what most systems are in the universe, then we're going to encounter not only the indicator, which would be that red star, but everybody is going to get a chance to see some of the more dynamic objects hovering around the sun on the backside. And like I said, man has no control over this. We have to kind of dodge it. But everybody's going to be able to see these things. But when it happens, believe it or not, if everybody were to see a second moon, right? Give it a month, and nobody would be concerned about it. They would normalize it. They're experts at normalizing everything, like that earthquake in Turkey. Nobody remembers that, right? All these things that have happened that are major, people normalize it. California, right? They have, of course, they're investigating to see what the cause is. There's already been talk that it's that ground disruption is 1,500 miles going south, right? That's a pretty big disruption just to be localized. And so, but they're going to normalize it, which throws people off. So yes, they're going to have their little defense stories
Mm-hmm.
like Beetlejuice and Beetle Guys
Mm-hmm.
and constellations. And there's a new constellation. Everybody's about to see them. When that happens, they'll normalize that. Experts will pop up and say, we're supposed to see that, this, that, and the other. So people have to really pay attention these days.
Mm-hmm. So, what do you mean by the land disruption in California, where the landslides are?
Where that landslide is, that's a very deep landslide, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the surface, it looks like, but we're talking about years of erosion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know where the dead forest is above that, right? They have a
Mm-hmm.
dead forest up there near Washington State. That same effect, this saltwater intrusion, is coming
Mm-hmm.
underneath California into some of those cracks that are in the land naturally, in the fault lines everywhere, right? They're detecting salt water in Nevada, places like that. You shouldn't have salt water in Nevada. You
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't have salt water in parts of Arizona, better, northern
Mm-hmm.
Arizona, places like that. You shouldn't have that, but they're having it. So we have a saltwater intrusion problem. Fresh water is being evacuated through natural processes. Well, I'll say accelerated processes. Salt water is taking its place. So irrigation is going to become a problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's that's one of the major things they have normalized, is that you don't really hear anybody talking about the troubles with the farms.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really hear that. Kind of like the pharmaceuticals. They have a severe shortage with pharmaceuticals. You don't hear too many people talking about that. And they're going to have to make some severe adjustments. All of this because the land is changing rapidly. Everywhere is changing. It's not just California. It's everywhere. So any fault lines that we know about, we should expect those to have some activity. Plus, fault lines that are brand new that hardly anybody ever detected, but they are, they're being mapped out now. The USGS will no doubt give their report, but they said that could take up to a year or 2 years for that report to find out what happened in California. They don't want to disclose any absolutes. Those are luxury homes, and that could terrify people, right?
Right.
But it's in all likelihood, you're looking at something that's about 1,500 miles underneath the surface of the earth. So is it going to stop there? Probably not. It'll continue. It's a very slow process. It can happen at any given time, but it's just something we face with a changing planet.
So, I was noticing there's a little swarm of earthquakes going on in Japan. Is that anything going on there?
Well, that's part of the Ring of Fire, and the Ring
Mm-hmm.
of Fire is on fire. The Ring of Fire is just active. It's very active.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that right now, right? Let me give a scenario.
Mm-hmm.
If what was seen in South Africa is in fact part of the twin system,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to see an escalation in heat, period, underneath the earth and above the earth and in the earth. We're going to see heat just go crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Then we're going to see a problem in the northern hemisphere with water, ice melts, things of that nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
If that is a fact, if that is really a fact, they're going to have to cover up quite a few things like strange particles coming in or drifting into the solar system. We're going to have some sort of space dust issue here that will begin to build. It won't be Sahara dust. This will cause a sickness because it's a known fact that viruses often come in with dust in the solar system. Now, not galactic cosmic rays and large, heavy particles, but things that are being carried all over the solar system and indeed the universe. Viruses, for example, on the space station, they took samples of viruses up there. They were 700% more potent, and the cultures grew so fast on the space station compared to Earth. So a virus thrives in space, right? Now they had this full report, but nobody was interested in that, I guess you could say. They weren't interested. So it's a known fact that viruses often come in on meteorites and things like that, right? Which is why, like that meteorite that went over Russia, that was destroyed. That was purposely hit. Somebody hit that. Somebody hit the other one, a few of them that flew in several places over the U.S. They were hit too. Those were hit too because they can't afford for these things to smack into the earth unless they happen to fall in an area that they don't care about or that they can actually utilize, right? But anything that will come over one of these major places, expect to have an aerial burst. Why? Because viruses thrive out there. Some of the scientific reports suggests that viruses are not natural to this Earth, to this planet, that they're just not natural. And there are several species locked in the ice like that, viruses. So, because if they've been here, right, everybody would have an immunity to it. If they haven't been here, then nobody's going to have an immunity to it. The DNA, what triggers our DNA to start replicating cells that will attack just that virus is just not going to be in our DNA if it does not come from Earth. And so there have been several cases of viruses that have just wreaked havoc, and they've identified that these things likely came from space. So anyway, yeah, viruses are very potent out there. And if we are in a twin system and people are starting to see this, expect strange viruses to really pick up, right? We're talking about beyond any vaccines or beyond any, killer bacteria, things like that, but strange sicknesses. Expect that. Also expect more land shifts or crustal displacement. And the reason why is because you're dealing with tidal forces. When another object comes in proximity to us, the sun is going to be the first thing that starts cutting up. It's going to be the first indicator something is wrong. When it has persistent activity that it's not supposed to have, right? Which means it's outside of its normal cycles, like it is right now. Then we have a problem. When it's active, possibly on one side, the sun still, is rotating and all that. But when it's active on one specific side, that's by way of influence only. It's not some natural process when it only does something on one side. So watch for that. We're going to see those increases. That'll be verification that we're in trouble. And then next, Earth is going to have these, dynamic changes in, for example, gravity, how electricity works. We're going to have interruptions in electricity. That's one of the biggest warnings right now that people are afraid of. Not the public, but the other guys for themselves. They're terrified because they're trying to mitigate the total loss of electricity. So that's quite major to them. It's not going to be publicized, I don't think. But when you're dealing with something that can interrupt electrons, right, which is the basis of electronics, electron or proton theory, whichever one you prefer, it's going to interfere with how electrons flow. So the constants of Ohm's law will change. Kirchhoff's law is going to change. All these different laws that govern or that mathematically give us insight into these electrons and protons and neutrons and things like that. It's going to change. That means our computers are not going to work right. It means errors are going to be produced on systems that have low error tolerance. Things like that will start to go haywire. And by the way, that's already beginning.
So how is that going to affect the AI then?
AI is different. AI can rewrite itself. There was a mandate to rush AI. And have you noticed? I mean, they've been doing everything to get AI out there. Why? Because if a computer has artificial intelligence installed on it, and say it has a AI chip on board, everything goes through that AI first. So it's going to analyze not only the data that's being requested of it, but it's also going to analyze its life data or its thinking data, the data it has. It knows how to categorize errors and only keep the clean information. So it can make micro adjustments to itself, right? Depending on how fast processor is, you're talking about a couple billion times per second or hundreds of billion times per second. So it can process quite a bit. They had a rush on AI, just like they GMO'd all the corn and wheat and things like that. So because they knew the temperatures were going to change, they knew that radiation was going to change. They knew that some of the chloride factors in the atmosphere were going to change, and so GMO food is more resistant to these things. So it looks normal. You can still eat it and stuff. It's still GMO, but it won't die like regular corn or spoil. Right? One example, go get a cantaloupe and see if it smells like trash. That's a phenomenon that started probably in the last, I'll say in the last 10 years, right? Cut a
Mm-hmm.
cantaloupe open, it should smell like trash. And there's a reason for that. Because everything that's biological like that, that's out there with how people did things, it's almost like it's degrading very quickly because of the elements, because of what's actually happening. We actually live in a almost like a pre-hostile environment, but because of medications, because of the foods, because of certain perfumes and pesticides and a combination of things, there's a resiliency factor with these manufacturers that manufacture chemicals that's been spread all throughout the earth.
Hmm.
So it makes us a bit more, makes everything a bit more resistant.
Hmm.
And oh, by the way, by 2040, they want nothing. Nothing on earth can be natural. Nothing.
Hmm.
This is by 2040. I'm saying 2040 because that's the one of the last reports anybody can get about this. But that was the mandate. Then by the year 2040, all the programs are in there, by the way. That
Mm-hmm.
means all the food must be altered to be modified, right?
Right.
Every human being must be modified.
Mm-hmm.
Every child must be modified by 2040. They want to do this because of the hostile environment and because of this Aquarius stuff that they believe in. So,
Aquarius stuff? What's the Aquarius
oh yeah,
stuff?
the age of Aquarius. No Christian is supposed to enter into the age of Aquarius. No Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And they're serious about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why, I guess that's why they, this child issue that the world has, take that for example. Why in the world would so many people have a problem with children like that? Why is there a
Mm-hmm.
market for children, period?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because people are corrupted and they're becoming more corrupted and they practice things they shouldn't practice. So these guys believe in satanic things. I mean, deep satanic things.
Mm-hmm.
And so long as they believe that, they're going to act in accordance with their satanic agenda, which does not include Christians, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are several programs against Christianity, not to obviously shut it down, but to cause it to shut itself down,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is why disinformation campaigns against Christianity, they've been funded again and again. That's when people come out, when a Christian says something that sticks and people start talking about it, they're going to have some disinfo campaign against that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Paid people go to various places to, they spread things, right? For example, now this, I don't want to make anybody mad, but there are certain arguments Christians have that nobody else is having,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, have you ever seen two people, normal people, talk about a round Earth or a flat Earth,
Mm-hmm.
and getting knocked out, drag out fights about it?
Right.
I've seen Christians do that,
Mm-hmm.
right? I haven't seen that in other chat rooms, because nobody cares what,
Mm-hmm.
if it's round or flat.
Mm-hmm.
But you bring that into Christianity, you'll have people that say, well, if you believe it's not flat, you're not a Christian. Well, what does that have to do with the soul and with Christ? Nothing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you have these
Mm-hmm.
planted stories.
Mm-hmm.
That's an age-old argument that used to exist, and somehow it came back up again. So you'll have stories like that keep Christians at each other's throats.
Right.
And then the world seems like it will bait a Christian to take one side of the world or another when Christ said, come out of the world,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
But the world draws people into it, and they take a side. Whatever side anybody on that side deems righteous, people take that side and they end up fighting their brothers. We're
Mm-hmm.
talking about Christians fighting Christians.
Mm-hmm.
They know Christ is coming back for a church without spot or wrinkle.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they can get Christians to defile themselves, that's how they do it, because they can't outright defile a Christian. They can't do that. They have no power over a Christian, or they would have done away with the churches a long time ago. They can't do it. And if they wanted to kill every Christian, why didn't they do it?
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't they do it? Right? Which means something is happening, but it's not quite, rational.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a spiritual thing, believe it or not, than a rational thing or logical thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And as far as with the children, the U.S. is the biggest consumer of the sex trafficking, and
Open investigations right now on that.
Yeah.
You know that?
Yeah.
Against Marriott, Hilton, all these hotels. It because it's an active investigation. People can find the charges and the charges and the evidence. They can find the evidence. In other words, what the charges are, like doors and closets, cameras on doorknobs and coat hangers, and cameras on screws, right? Where they can actually shop for children. And they go in there and take them. These are, now this is in court right now. There are active investigations against these hotels with those charges. And they have the evidence. They have the screws. They have the doorknobs. They went to several hotels, and the hotel cannot say, we weren't compliant, not the people who are governing these hotels. An employee may be ignorant of it, right? But they have back door. What are you doing with a back door in the bathroom, right? A little door behind the toilet that takes you underground, underneath the hotel, right? Into other places. Right. So those are active investigations, and that's absolutely happening. Puerto Rico had a bigger problem, but they were hit by that hurricane. That put a stop to a lot of it. I would suspect that will also happen here because it's really bad. It's really bad. I agree with you there. It's bad. But again, they have disinformation campaigns where they just call a person. They will connect because people, most people do not know where QAnon came from, right? It just came out of the blue and it built up momentum. Well, they boosted QAnon because they already knew what was coming, right? They knew. Yeah, they knew what was coming anyway. I don't want to say too much about that, but it's a bad problem here in the USA. And you have a lot of people with money who are complicit about that, right? Jeffrey Epstein should be known. That's not a secret, right? Right. There are ongoing investigations about that island. Some other person bought up that island and tried to cement everything up, but they couldn't do it, right? So all that's out in the open. The sad part is people, when you come out with the evidence, people no longer care, it seems like. They don't care. Right. But yeah, it's a bad problem with the children here. But why would it be a bad problem with children? Who are these people that demand children? It's got to be a lot of people because there's a lot of missing children every single year. Right. And a lot of those kids are never recovered. Or they come back later, 10 years later, totally corrupted, believing something, far different than what they started in. So yeah, it's a bad problem. It's a very bad problem.
Yeah, it's like when we go to another country, they'll be like, our children can play in the streets without any worry.
That's right.
They can't.
Well, we have the most prisons. We have the most prisons, right? We have most of everything. And Hollywood's not. A lot of that stuff happens with these rich people, right? For example, Jamie Foxx. Everybody knows about Jamie Foxx, right? Well, there's some people coming forward about Jamie Foxx, and it's not going to be pretty, because he was starting to tell too much. He really was. Now that the video evidence is there, right, released by others who care about him, that's going to be a story within itself, which leads back to this, what you were just talking about, the children. Sad to say, the children. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's not good. Not good. And like you say, the people who are actually trying to win that war pay heavy costs.
Yeah, they do. But it's a God bless them, whoever's in those folks involved in that, God bless them. There have been a couple times, Sister Heidi, I was involved in extracting females from slavery. And it's a very intricate and ugly thing. It really is just an ugly thing. And it happens all the time. All the time. It's a very sad thing, but it's prominent here in America. It is terrible here in America. So, but that's why hopefully nobody is praising these systems out there in the world, but in fact praying about them and the people in them. And yeah, because it's going to get worse. It will get worse in the age of Aquarius. Is to not have Christians interfere with that, right? Every believer interferes with their stuff. They do. Right. So they don't want them around. And they've already declared no Christian is going to step foot. They're not going to enter into the age of Aquarius. So they have their little, plans.
Right. And so like one of the plans I was talking about earlier this week, the Archbishop comes forward and he says, Oh, I really think that the Lord's Prayer, we shouldn't say that because people have had trouble with their fathers. When you say our Father, that's troublesome to people who have had troubles with their fathers. Well, when you remove our Father, you've removed all authority because it says,
Yep,
Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. You just removed all authority
that's
from
right.
that prayer. And
That's
so
right.
it goes deeper than that, and which he obviously, being an archbishop, knows that.
Right.
And
Right.
so, yeah, it's an assault against Christianity
It
by
is.
by trying to say, oh, that we're being, respectful to somebody who's had trouble with their fathers, with their earthly fathers. No, that's just totally a lie.
I tell you, they want it that way. They want to desensitize every
Mm-hmm.
single believer out there because,
Mm-hmm.
again, they cannot curse Christians. They can't. They just can't do it. All they can do is have a Christian curse themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking about those who believe in Christ. And with that statement you just said, well, they have an issue with. I'm not against any Catholics or anything like that. I don't do
Mm-hmm.
that. But
Mm-hmm.
in the Bible it says, "Call no man father. You have one Father, your Father in heaven." And so,
Mm-hmm.
that by that passage,
Mm-hmm.
of course, that's what the prayer is depicting, Father in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, sometimes you have bad people in places where they shouldn't be, but
Mm-hmm.
everything is going to be brought to light.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, because they're not going to keep it behind closed doors. That's one thing people can look forward. Well, it'll be disgusting. It
Mm-hmm.
won't be good, but they don't have a desire to hide what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
They plan on putting everything they've been doing in the background right in people's faces. But you know what? Here's the sad fact. They've been doing that slowly.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like Christians are not rebuking it.
Exactly.
They're just not rebuking it.
Mm-hmm.
It is, and that's how a Christian can become complicit with the sins of a place and become part of that place and corrupt themselves. Because if they're not standing against it, then they are in fact with it. To
Mm-hmm.
be complicit, to be silent behind it, is to be complicit with it. That's their personal approval.
Mm-hmm.
But prayer works. Prayer works. And people are slick. They'll try to get you to agree. They'll get you in a situation when you have to keep peace and bring up one of those conversations and look you dead in the eye and say, "Well, isn't that right? Right in front of everybody else."
Mm-hmm.
But it's time for the Lord's people to be bold and
Mm-hmm.
say, "No, it isn't right."
Mm-hmm.
Just be true about it,
Mm-hmm.
because a compromises are deadly.
Right.
And damnation is a very eternal sentence, and it's not meant for anybody who believes in Christ. That's We're not meant for damnation. We're
Mm-hmm.
being raised here on this earth, and
Mm-hmm.
but the Lord is going to have some things unpacked for us, and this system coming in, that's going to scare them. It shouldn't scare us. It's going to get them though. It's going to really shuffle them up, uh, because the Lord did say their hearts are going to fail them for fear.
Mm-hmm.
Not us, them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's happening already. They're trying to do everything they can to mitigate it. They've even come out about chemtrails. Do you know that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They have they have an airline that came out about the chemtrails. I think that comes out next month. They're going to show people the equipment that was used, how the contract worked and how much they were getting offset as far as fuel goes. They're going to come out with that and tell everybody why. I suspect they're doing that because it takes a long time, takes many years for those conditions to actually start to affect people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not quite the story you would think it would be, right? It's not quite that story, but they don't care anymore. But why not? That's a question a lot of people are going to have. Why don't they care? With this UFO topic, uh, talking about UAPs and alien life forms, why are they becoming transparent in certain areas? What is the real deal? You better believe it's not nice. It's not for our benefit. That's not what it's for. They're not helping us out. Uh, it's for a good reason, but it's a twisted reason. And so people are going to find out quite a bit. Their Sister Heidi, quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Right. And you're going to tell us about Leviathan,
Yes.
the Leviathan kingdom.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Leviathan. I think what was it? Leviathan, that name Leviathan was, what was it? I'm trying to think of the word. What was the word? It was another word in Greek and the root word in Hebrew, which meant twisted and all those things. But that kingdom, in the Bible, the Leviathan itself was named, what, 4 or 5 times in the Bible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in Job, it was one thing. In the parts of the Old Testament, it was one thing. And after Job, it was something else. But all of them were this attitude, this disposition against God's people.
Mm-hmm.
All of them were. So whatever it inhabits is not for God's people.
Mm-hmm.
But I can almost tell you that if people aren't careful, they will embrace that Leviathan kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
They will embrace it. They will embrace it. If they're not grounded, they will embrace it.
Mm-hmm. If they're not grounded, they will embrace it. That's concerning,
Yeah.
deeply concerning.
Yeah, it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is. Well, because spiritual, all the news that's out there that people are exposed to, right? How is a person supposed to know who's telling or who has the actual facts? It's very difficult. And so, but without the spirit, without a person having spiritual ears and spiritual eyes, they can't know the truth. Mm-hmm. Because people, part of a truth mixed with a part lie is not the truth. Mm-hmm. The whole truth is also not a bunch of facts, because that's just not truth either. But in order for a person to know the truth, they've got to have spiritual hearing. We're not supposed to be spiritual deaf. And once they have that truth, they can hear beyond, some of the things that are being said. Like, for example, this the submarine, something that simple, the submarine. I wonder how many people on the first day said they can find that submarine. Why are they not telling people, right? Mm-hmm. And then they waited all those days, because the truth was, even if they found it, they couldn't do anything about it. You have to depressurize those people, or they get the bends coming up and they'll die anyway, right? Mm-hmm. So that takes special equipment to transport them. But if our Navy is so advanced, right, and we can walk through cavity bubbles from one sub to the other, why didn't they, get those folks out? What's actually behind this thing, And I think that certain people caught on to that. It seems strange and odd. It's a very odd story. It's very mm-hmm. tragic, yes, but it was very odd. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, when it was too late, they come out with the story saying these guys have passed. Then when you look into these guys' lives, you find out that they match the profile of the rest of the billionaires who were either committing suicide or somehow ended up in some deadly accident. Every single last one of them used to do what with that the character on that movie Pretty Woman used to do. They used to buy up companies, right, and sell them all for parts. All of them were involved in that same practice. Why all of them? Why all of them? Mm-hmm. And of course, I believe it has to do with the money system. Mm-hmm. That's coming, part of this money system. It's a lot of, they have a lot of guilt. They have a lot of guilt. And when that money system changes, you can't exactly buy up a corporation and sell it all for parts, because money will be channeled a different way, right? People are still going to have their money. It's going to be channeled a different way. They don't want that, because now those folks that were in the background and control will have absolute control with no middleman over who gets what. It won't bother a person. That's not going to bother a person who is normal. But with this retrofit of all the computer programs and stores is coming faster than any of us would like. Mm-hmm. We're not looking at years here, because Walmart just signed their agreements for all of their stores. Mm-hmm. So here we go.
I know I literally walked into this thing in the Circle K gas station.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, I don't know what this thing is. And the man behind the counter is like, oh, come down here. It's like me. And so then somebody sent me the article, and there was like it was an AI counter, essentially. And that's what I was walking into. Apparently, you just put your stuff on it, and it knows what to do, how to check it out.
Yeah, and it's bad too, because AI will discuss nothing with you unless it identified you. Mm-hmm. It will not interact unless it. Did you see a camera of the store?
Mm-hmm.
You saw that too, okay?
Yeah.
So that when that system goes into
place,
well, when it goes into play, mm-hmm. Because they're going to follow what the UK is doing with the license, or what the Australia is doing with the license. UK, Germany is doing the same thing. They're going to get rid of that. Your identification is going to be consolidated.
Mm.
And that consolidation, once they have that consolidation finished, they will I'm going to say this, it's not actually the procedure, but they will hard code your ID on some sort of bio device. This bio device is only active with the user, right? So, for example, if you had a bracelet on, right, that bracelet, like these iWatches, anybody have a Apple Watch or something like that? That Apple Watch has a capability. I know this is going to sound, this is a wild one, Sister Heidi, so this is a wild one. You can actually take a sample of DNA without going through anybody's skin. You don't have to pierce the skin to get the DNA anymore. So the Apple Watch can actually analyze continuously your DNA, hormone levels, all that good stuff. And with a bracelet, identification bracelet, your cell phone works, your computer works, your car works, and all that. Without the bracelet, it will not work. And so what that does is somebody tries to hack your stuff, they have to have that bioidentity to even send to go and log into anything that belongs to you. It's going to confirm it every single time. With a bracelet, you can confirm your identity. I believe it's up to a couple million times per second, right? That means packets, anybody who knows about networking, packets will travel differently. Each packet's going to be connected to an identity. The system for that is the one they recently finished in the USA, where they house 3 AI big machines, right? And that will start to govern it all. The other one is in Turkey. That's where the other machine is, in Turkey. And there's the UK has one. I believe there's one more in the Middle East, but I'm not sure as to its precise location. But Turkey certainly has one, which is strange, right? That's really strange. Like they're permanent. Israel does not have one. They don't have one. And they're the, somewhat the architects behind quite a few breakthroughs for people. But maybe that's the problem, because this will certainly not be for the people. But Sister Heidi, people are going to ask for this. Because after the I'm going to call it a cyber apocalypse, right? After the cyber apocalypse, people are going to be relieved to have anything that will stop hackers. They're going to be relieved. So they're not going to complain about any bracelet, any ident, anything. Because once everything is shut down, they say it's hackers. That's just going to throw people back. And when it's restored, right, they tell everybody why, that everybody has to be in compliance. Well, that's going to change everything. And it's all downhill from there. As far as the beast system is concerned, because all of it's going to be directly used for that system of the beast. Once you get everybody on the bracelet, the next step is to have that as part of them, right? And they can do that. That's a 1 second procedure now.
Yeah.
A 1 second procedure now. So, yeah, they've come a long way.
I'm sure. And so it'd be a COVID-like emergency, just it's a cyber emergency or whatever.
Yeah, it will. And people will want it. If you can't access the internet, right? Can you imagine if the internet shut off and they said, well, you got to have COVID-19, so you got to have the COVID-19 vax for your cell phone to work, and this, that, and the other to work. And they said it has something to do with bio, right? After 2 months of not having internet, not being able to see anything from anybody, right? How many people would comply? How many people would bend to that? Who would agree to be a recluse in the woods? Because if you don't have identification, you can't have an account. You can't pay any bills. You can't use any money, right? That's what we're looking at.
Yep. It's an AI world.
Yeah. I know they're gonna ask. I can't see that screen yet, but I know they're gonna ask, is that gonna be the mark of the beast? The mark of the beast is the renunciation of Christ.
Yes.
And certain people have seen the I guess you could say the agreement. And if people are going to get, they're going to start coming out talking about how they had to sign some type of form saying they would not use the name of Jesus in certain facilities, right? And on certain bases. That's a fact. You have to sign it or you cannot enter the premises of quite a few places. And that number has gone up. to be a part of the system, everybody's going to have to sign. They're going to have their agreement on something that they will not consider Christ a sovereign. They will not speak about Christ. That takes a total renunciation of Christ to enter into, whatever you're going to enter into. That will be the moment the person says no. There's no being slick, saying, yeah, I'll do it just to eat, but the Lord knows I really believe. No, because the Lord said if we deny him before men, he'll deny us before the angels. Right. And they're going to get Christians to attempt to deny Christ. I know a lot of Christians deny Christ unknowingly right now, but this will be right in front of their faces. It'll be connected to their citizenship, a brand new identity, because they're going to swap the system. The old system is dead. It is dead. The old system is done for.
Wow. So we got a lot to look forward to. We have to have a faith to die for.
I'm just glad that Christ will be our strength to get us through. Because it didn't say in Revelation, nobody. It says those who are actually covered by the blood of the Lamb will not. Those who are written in the book of life will not take the mark of the beast, nor have the number of his name or any of that stuff. So because of Christ, we're good to go. Without Christ, we're doomed. We're gonna fold. And that means people's minds are going to change. So we have a large magnetic anomaly or influence that will start that process with the mind. With the mind. Yeah, the more the magnetosphere changes, have you noticed subtle changes in the irritation of people? This is before COVID-19.
Yeah, we actually were just talking about that everybody was a little off.
Yeah. It's going to continue to happen and get worse. And the Russians found out about that. They did. They found out that outside the Earth's magnetosphere, right? Outside the magnetic influence of the Earth and the environment, neurological connections start to break. They cannot stay assembled. So they have to replicate. If people believe that somebody went out in space, they have to replicate the magnetic field to go out there, or a person will go crazy and everything in their frontal lobe snaps. It just snaps. Those connections are broken. And of course that governs empathy and all sorts of things. So you come back a raving lunatic, right? That'll get worse. That'll get worse because the sun's magnetic properties have shifted, right? The Earth has really shifted. And, things are starting to change, subtle at first, but they'll continue, which means a lot of amateur astronomers are going to start picking subtleties up, right? But when that happens, you better believe they're going to put something will happen to the internet because they don't want people to communicate such things just yet, right? Will interrupt everything they're trying to do. They really need us to corrupt ourselves. That's what their primary focus is. So if they can hold back information that will scare us, they're going to use anything they can use to disprove our belief in Christ. They're going to do it. It's already happening in mainstream. People are starting to talk about Jesus like that name is a punchline. Lots of folks have denounced Christianity, period, saying that because of the disclosure of text, right? Because of the alien topic, it has caused a lot of people to believe now that Christ was one of them. He was just some ordinary, person. Yes, he had some, he was like a prophet. Well, that sounds like Islam, believe it or not, doesn't it? Because they say Jesus was just a prophet. Right. That's denouncing Christ. And so these people who believe in, who really want these ETs to come down and restore them, that's the way they talk. These people who believe in those things, that's the way they're talking now. And that number is pretty high. It's not a low number. You're talking about more than half of all the people here on this earth believe in that. Yeah. So,
are you talking about where they fix their DNA or whatever?
Yes. They believe their DNA is going to change by the sun and everything. And what they don't realize is Jesus said, if you seek to save your flesh, seek to save your life, you're going to lose it. And all this DNA stuff is just preserving the body. When Jesus came to save our souls, not our skins, right? He didn't come to save our hides, but our souls. But the people in these topics If anybody wants to really see what they're about, any topic that would teach a person just to do everything to save their own life, right? They're missing the entire point of the salvation of the soul and of the quickening, because the Lord's going to sustain people as He needs to sustain them based on their calling. It's based on their calling, not not vacations, on the calling. So as people need to do, the Lord will provide. It's a very simple formula there, but these other folks, they're coming out daily denouncing their Bible's beliefs, and they do it with hatred. They do it with hatred. So, that's not something I look forward to, but it's spreading all over the place, which makes Christianity is going to be a very negative topic here soon.
It is for a lot of people already, sadly.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. Did I answer the question about that red thing?
I think so.
Sort of. I may have gotten off guard because, one of the biggest indicators for any inbound object, and of course nobody has control, this thing could appear at any given moment. If that guy saw something that was not one of those known stars, and he likely saw it. And sad to say, once you see it, it's too late. It's too late because the forces have already taken effect. Once you see that thing, the earth changes. Historically, the earth was altering, and then they saw it, right? And then it got really bad, really fast. So the changes are exponential. If it's too late. There's no timetable, because that thing is traveling very fast, which means it's gonna it speeds up as it comes closer and closer to us, right? So that throws any calculated expectation date. It throws it out. You can have a season, something like that. But as far as being precise, no, because there's no way to really track the absolute speed of this thing. But it will start to exchange chemicals with the sun. It will have its most direct interaction with the sun. I personally believe that's when our skies are going to be red, not only by reason of thick smoke, because it's going to start setting volcanoes off everywhere, right? That small, subtle change will shift the land masses. And when that happens, we have magma underneath these land masses. That magma is going to find a way out. It's under high pressure. It's looking for a way out. So we should see multiple eruptions, but sustained eruptions, not necessarily, big devastating eruptions, but think about 300 more volcanoes going off and they don't stop, something like that. We'll start seeing things like that. Then, of course, the earthquakes will come intermittently with that, and they will be powerful, not small. But that's only the beginning, because then we'll have, those pressure differences. For example, if the pressure changes, like some of these high and low pressure systems, if the pressure of these storms continues to build, then it's a known fact that within a very short time, we could see the oceans boil because of a pressure change. See, the temperature could be, for example, if the ambient temperature is 97 degrees, the oceans can actually boil with a small temperature change, right? They can actually boil. It's kind of like going from the coastline of Carolina to Denver, Colorado. You're going to have a different boiling point based on altitude because of pressure. Well, the same thing with the pressure of the atmosphere. If it changes, your boiling point changes also. So that's a boiling off of the oceans. That means no water for anybody. Things like that will begin to happen.
Yeah. So you sound like Matthew 24. It's pretty much what you're sounding like.
Well, I believe somehow they're tied of what Jesus was telling us what would come. But he said something that is a big caution to me. He said that, and I know people liken this to the giants, but for the sake of this conversation, I'm gonna switch it on. I'm gonna focus on one little thing in Matthew. He said, it'll be like the days of Noah were when they were buying and selling, eating, drinking, get married, given into marriage. He said, until the day Noah entered into the ark, right? They knew not until the floodwaters came, right? They didn't know anything until it actually overtook them. Well, the world, because they normalize everything, because they're always explaining away everything. They're going to continue to do that until they cannot, right? So for Christians, it's up to us to look to each other, to really start not depending on the news, but to look to one another, right? And then always stay in the Word of God, but to really have discussions about this so that we can't depend on media. We should know that by now, right? They didn't tell us that 9/11 was going to happen. They haven't predicted any earthquakes. They haven't predicted any volcanic explosions. But people on the internet that are of Christian community folks, they have, right? So we just have to utilize each other to get that picture and not forget, one another, right? So that we can understand what's happening. Because it's going to overtake everybody. If they're waiting on some official report, they can forget it. Just like this UFO disclosure. If they're waiting on the government to disclose officially something in favor of the UFOs and people believe in stuff, they forget it.
Right.
They're not going to disclose that. This is almost like look what they're doing. They say they're going to release this video and that thing they have. They're trickling out things to tie people up. To keep people looking at them, right? In the meanwhile, we have people having too many encounters. What was it? 400 or 500 people saw a specific thing 3 days ago. Where's that at? Las Vegas. That happened at the beginning of the year. It was another almost 1,000 people were sitting there watching something. In China, we had thousands watching something. In Japan, hundreds and if not thousands of people watching something. So people are seeing things, people are talking about it, but they're still waiting for the government to announce it. They're not going to confirm, things like that. They're not. They're going to be, their hand's going to have to be forced. It's going to have to be forced. But people are going to see it with their own eyes. And when they do, I hope they don't fall apart because it's not, it's not something fake. It isn't.
A lot to ponder on. That's for sure.
Yeah, hopefully they get it. There are good and bad ones. There are good and bad ones. There are watchers out there. Those are the ones that won't allow us to go to war when we want to. And then there are the nefarious ones that play peekaboo at night. And they're in your dreams and so on and so forth. But yeah, we're in a very different times and things are escalating.
Things are escalating.
Yep, they are.
Yes. Wow. Well, thank you so much, Mike, for being here with us and helping us with Pastor Paul.
Yeah, tell him I started. That was one engine tonight.
That was just one engine tonight?
That was just one.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
I pray he recovers fully. Heidi, it's always awesome talking with you guys. Being here is my honor.
Thank you.
Pastor Paul, recover. Recover. You guys are spearheading this. There's a lot of Christian activities, and I'm thankful for you too. Very thankful for it.
Oh, we're very thankful for you, always. So, okay. All right. Well, God bless.
God bless you too.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.